What's up guys, Doug Polk here, and today we're doing a vlog at the Aria. You know, I had to stop by and take care of a couple things, so I thought, you know what, we'll see what's running, we'll hop into the mix. I have no idea what stakes I'm gonna be able to play. I kind of doubt we're gonna get to play something too high, but I figure let's just see what the action's like, get a couple hands, go from there. Now, this is gonna be recorded on my phone. I'm not sure how high of quality that's gonna be. I'm not sure there's gonna be any errors. Obviously, we're not gonna be recording at the table because they don't allow that. It's frowned upon at the Aria, but hopefully we can play something reasonably high stakes. If not, that's just the way it is. We'll see what we can do. All right, 3,000. All right, we're good to go. Thank you. I guess we're gonna probably play some like 510 or something. I don't know what's running. Maybe 510, maybe whatever. Let's go ahead and see what's going. Mission accomplished, guys. In for 5.5, out for 91. Good times here at the Aria. Good times. Okay, so not exactly the best session. In for 5,500, out for 91. Casual, little minus $5,400 session. But we have a couple hands to talk about. So I'm gonna sit down here on this bench at Aria and let's talk about a couple of the hands and go through, you know, maybe we should or shouldn't have done. So I don't have any of this vlogger gear. I'm just holding up my camera right now and going from there. So it's a little shaky. Excuse my weak arms for not being able to hold up the camera. Now, our first hand isn't really that interesting. It's just a concept that I wanted to talk about for a moment. The hand with the cutoff opened to 40, button called, and I called the big blind with king queen. So the pot's about $125, and we have king queen off. Flop comes 4-3 deuce rainbow. I check, checks through. Turn is a jack. Now, in the big blind, I feel like this is a pretty good spot for king queen to take a stab. You know, I've got two overcards to top pair, could definitely value bet that. But another interesting thing about this spot is that I block king jack, queen jack, which are going to be some of like the most common hands that turn top pair. So my removal is decent, my equity is pretty solid, and I decided to bet about $100 into 120. Now, at this point, the cutoff decides to make it 240. I would have to advocate for never raising here in the cutoff at all, with my logic being that I don't think you're almost ever going to have nutted hands. You know, if you have a jack, it's not two pair, because you're not raising up like jack X, jack 4, jack 3, jack deuce in the cutoff. And then also, if you have a hand like a straight, you're mainly going to be betting the flop. If you do decide to check it back, you should probably just call turn, protect some of your weaker hands in that call range, and then that way if you bet on the river, you don't just have a jack, you can have some of those stronger hands. If you start raising up a bunch of your hands on the turn, the big blind can have sets, the big blind can have 6-5, the big blind can have ace-5, the big blind can have two pairs, the big blind can have jack 4, jack 3, jack deuce. So you're really asking for it when you raise here. And the button folded, it got back to me, and I decided to let king queen go. But if I had like 7-5 or 7-6, or I turned a backdoor flush draw, then I might just decide to 3-bet you on the flop and just go all the way with it, because if I did have a hand like a straight or a set, but maybe more likely a straight, then I would take that line to try and stack you. So there's a spot you should call, your range is pretty capped, you should try and play rivers. The next thing I want to talk about actually isn't even a hand. It was just something that I saw happening at the table and I want you guys to be aware of. There was a player at the table, and I don't think they were doing this maliciously, but they had their hundreds in the back of their stack. So you couldn't really see how many of them there were. You couldn't tell how much money they were sitting on. And in those spots, look, if someone asks you how much are you playing, you don't have to answer, but it is a rule in every casino that your big chips have to be out front. Because if that wasn't the case, people could just angle you by putting big chips in the back, and then whenever it was, you know, your decision, kind of manipulating what you do, manipulating what you might want to do based on what their stack looks like. That's totally not allowed. So if you see someone with big chips in the back, just ask them to put their chips to the front. I didn't in this case because I just didn't want to be like kind of a dick about it. especially when I'm dropping down stakes, just play a session for this vlog. But in general, if someone is putting their bigger chips in the back of their stack, you have every right to see what they are at the front, so you don't make a big mistake. And this is something that constantly ends up being a problem, and it's a way you can get angled. So don't be afraid to ask how much they're playing, ask for the big chips up front so that you're safe when you're playing against them. All right, we have quite the cast of characters right now in the Aria Ballet. But anyway, let's move on to talking about the first major hand of the night. So I decided to open up in the low jack with 5-4 clubs. The hijack calls, which is a tighter, more conservative player. Cutoff calls, looks like some kind of reg. And then the big blind calls as well. The flop comes 8-6 deuce, which is a pretty good flop for my hand. You know, obviously a great spot to semi-bluff. Gonna have overpairs, gonna have sets, all that kind of stuff too. And then, you know, a decent chunk of runouts that I can hit. 2 diamonds, 1 clubs. I also have the backdoor flush draw. All in all, pretty solid hand to bet. So I go ahead and I bet the flop for 110 and around 160. The hijack calls, the cutoff folds, and the big blind calls. So at this point, we're looking at a pot of around $490, $500 as we take a turn. The turn is an offsuit 4, which is a really interesting card because a lot of times, you know, when I have straight draws and I pair, I look to kind of take my showdown value. But in this spot exactly, it makes a little more sense to continue to barrel because the big blind can definitely have 7-5, can definitely have, you know, hands like 6-4 or 8-4 or 5-3 suited. So I have some reasonable removal across those hands with 5-4. And my hand's also not going to be strong enough to check call a bet against larger sizes. You know, if I check and the hijack bets, or, you know, if the hijack bets and God forbid the big blind raises, in most of those spots, I'm really not going to be able to continue profitably. So I decided to continue to barrel, and when you bet this turn with a hand like this, you're really committing to betting 3 if the board texture doesn't change. It's a lot better to bet hands like this that have some reasonable removal than it is to bet a hand like diamonds, you know, because if I have a flush draw and I get to the river and it bricks, those are the kinds of hands I'd want him to have and like go on the river. Anyway, so I go ahead and I bet around 330. The hijack calls again, the big blind folds. So we're going into the river, the pot, it's around $1,100, $1,200. The river comes a queen that completes the flush draw. And the action is, of course, on me. So first off, you know, I will have hands like 10-9 suited, and if I had 10-9 suited, I would definitely triple. It would be a little questionable whether I'd want to bet that on the turn. If I did bet, I would definitely want to fire this river. And the only other hand that I think I could really have that makes a lot of sense is a hand like 9-7 suited, which I would almost certainly take this line with and want to fire. But after 9-7, what hands do I really have here? You know, I'm going to want to bet sets. I'm going to want to bet straights. Can definitely have 7-5 suited. Can definitely have some sets. Can definitely have a bunch of flushes. You know, if I did go bet with a flush draw and got there on the river, I'm going to want to bet that as well. So I'm looking at this river spot and I'm thinking to myself, you know, I'm going to have 20, 30, 40 combos of value. I can't only bluff my 9-7 suiteds that weren't diamonds. Only 3 combos. So 5-4 suited, you know, looks to be one of my most reasonable hands. Already a little bit of a loose open from the low jack. So it doesn't really get that much worse than this hand here, you know, in terms of hands I could have here that might want to bluff. Maybe 4-3 suited, although that hand's even less likely to open, and then this truck in the background just cracks me up. Anyway, so I decided to fire about 720 on the river. Hijack tanks it, and then ultimately calls with kings, which, kings no diamond, which I think there may be a little bit of just like, I'm going to try and trap Doug here and call him down with kings. Not a terrible idea, I guess, but obviously 3-betting pre-flop would have been preferable. And this is one of the problems that can happen when you have kings. You get runouts like this. You know, what if the big blind had raised on the flop return? What would he have done then? What if the runout gets even worse? So, yeah, it worked out for him here, but I guess the biggest thing to take away from this hand is sometimes you have to bluff with some hands that don't have a diamond in them, even on the diamond runouts, because, look, yeah, it's better if I could have a high diamond. I wish I could, but I'm probably not going to bet those 2 streets anyway, so I just picked one of my most reasonable hands to go 3 streets with. The last hand I want to talk about today, which was my largest pot of the session. So I straddled up in the big blind, straddled up under the gun, get a little more action, get a few more hand histories for the vlog. And under the gun opens. The big blind, the natural big blind calls, and I call him the straddle. I don't know why I have to call it the natural big blind. It's just the big blind. Anyway, I call him the straddle with the 5-4 off. The raise was to 3 blinds, or to 3x the straddle. It's 5-4 somewhere around the bottom. I'm calling it the offsuit hands, but close either way. So the flop comes 9-3 deuce. So I flop an open ender to the nuts on both sides, and there is no flush draw. So of course this also makes my straight draw a decent amount stronger. Big blind checks, I check. Under the gun bets. Big blind calls. And with 5-4 in this spot, I'm looking to mix between call and raise. They're both good. This is one of the best raise hands you can have on the flop. You know, I'm gonna have 9s, I'm gonna have 3s, I'm gonna have deuces, I'm gonna have 9-3 suited, 9-2 suited, 3-deuce suited, all these hands I can have. So we got an array of value bets, and we want to make sure to work in some bluffs with hands like 5-4, with hands like 6-5 backdoor flush draw, 6-4 backdoor flush draw. Maybe some ace-x, like ace-4 backdoor flushes could be good too. But open-enders are going to be, you know, the heart and soul hand that we're looking to bluff with. So I check raise it to around 320. I think that pre-roll goes 60, call 60. I call 60 in the big blind. Flop, PFR bets something along the lines of 80. I make it 320 back on the PFR. So he goes ahead and he makes it $880, and the big blind folds. Now, here in the big blind, if he had re-raised it to a smaller size, I don't mind continuing my whole range as a call, because I might have some, you know, other hands that I want to call. If I had a hand like ace-4 backdoor nut flush draw, I might want to call. Maybe if I had like 6-4 backdoor nut flush draw, I might want to call. If I said 7-5 earlier, I didn't mean it. I meant 6-4. But when he goes 880, he's really saying that I'm either bluffing or I have a hand that I want to commit with. So the way we should approach this in the big blind is I want to commit with hands like, you know, my sets, some 2 pairs, really that's about it, and a few bluffs. Well, what are the best bluffs? And the answer is, you know, 5-4 backdoor flush draw, which I don't have, will probably be like the best one. But after that, it's really just 5-4. If we count up how many combinations of really strong hands we have, you know, we have 3 of 9s, 3 3s, 3 deuces, and then we think about all those hands, we're gonna have to mix in some hands like our open-enders in order to bluff jam enough. So I decided to have no flat range, either jam or fold, jam my open-enders, and then also jam with my 2-pair plus. So I decided to rip it in for 3K, and no problem, just 3-bet calls jacks in the flop. You know, personally, I thought it was a little more polar than that, because if you get jacks in, you run to a hand like a set or even 2-pair, you're in pretty bad shape. And when you run to 5-4, you know, I still have a lot of equity against you, so it's not really a great spot. We ran the first board out, Brick City, ran the second board out, Brick City, and I just get basically felted. And I asked him, like, why'd you go with jacks there? And he said, you're famous, man. So I don't know, maybe I gotta lower the semi-bluff equity a little bit. I don't know. In general, you know what though, just as a general topic, like, a lot of people try and play it against their image or whatever, but I really just try and play a good strategy, not sweat, you know, if people are gonna play super aggressive against me or not, because if I do have a hand like a set in that spot, I'm just gonna stack them, right? So, and I'm gonna flop sets, I'm gonna flop 2 pairs, whatever. The main thing is just to not get too out of line with your bluffing, because if you do that, then yeah, they can start to own you by just getting in whatever against your bluffs. But if you play a solid strategy, it doesn't matter if someone knows who you are or not. Long run, you're gonna get them. Don't let them change your game day to day. All right, so that's it for today's quick Aria vlog sesh. We're gonna go ahead and call it a sesh here. Thank you guys for tuning in. Maybe we'll do another one of these. This was just really random. I just stopped by Aria. I was like, you know what? Let's just go for it. I'm headed to Oklahoma tomorrow to play a poker night in America. So if you want to check that out, head over to their Twitch channel. It'll be streamed. Also, I am doing a Facebook giveaway. I'll announce it more formally on the channel tomorrow. But yeah, if you want to check that out too, Facebook, Duck Bug Poker. Thanks guys for tuning in. I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, and one more thing. I got home a few hours ago and I realized I didn't bring up the pocket queens that's in the thumbnail. And the reason was because I 3-bet them and got the fold. So really nothing happened there, but I still thought it was the best hand I got dealt that session, so I wanted to put it in the thumbnail.